Now again, we're going to be talking about cache, and you may remember I talked quite a bit about cache earlier, and so I'm going to bring the graphic back up in just a moment that I used in that earlier video. So here's the problem. We mentioned about clock speed. We said that the CPU has a clock speed that is maybe double or some multiple of the external clock speed. So that means that the CPU is sitting around waiting for instructions or data to arrive from RAM. So what do we do about that? Well, we have some cache memory that is very fast that can keep up with the clock. And there are 3 levels of that cache depending on how soon we're going to need that memory. So we have to do some prediction here. The CPU has a controller on board, and let's take a look here at that graphic again. So here's a controller, the memory and cache controller, that is really good. This is kind of an early AI, if you will. Based on what that computer is doing, it predicts what the next instruction is, or what the next bit of data is that's going to be needed. And it can load that from RAM into cache so that it's ready for the processor when the processor needs it. Now once again, remember the L1 cache is the fastest, L2 cache is a little slower, L3 cache is a little slower yet, and the L1 cache is where you really want most of the heavy lifting here. That's where you want. It's smaller though. It's a very small amount of memory. L2 cache is a little bit larger, L3 cache is a little bit larger, and then of course RAM is the largest yet. Why don't we just make them all large? Well, because cache is extremely expensive, because it's extremely high speed memory. So we have to make some predictions, and the controller does that. So for example, if I'm executing a statement at say hex 01F5, then I might predict that 01F6 might be the next instruction that I'm going to need. So I might load 6, 7, 8, 9 into the cache so that it's ready for me, so that I can read those all at once without having to go fetch each one, because it would slow the internal clock speed down to the level of the external clock speed, which is way slower. So that's what's going on with cache. Now again, we have this little slide here that talk about L1, L2, and L3. They even mentioned L4 cache. L1 is the fastest, runs at the same speed as the CPU. L2 is a little slower but larger. L3 until the last several years was not part of the CPU. Now they're beginning to put it on the CPU a little bit more often, usually on the motherboard. And L4 cache will usually be found on the motherboard if it exists at all. This is a little bit more recent. And then we talked about the cache controller. Again, that's this guy right here, this kind of purple box, if you will, that predicts what data will be needed and makes the data available in cache before it's needed.